and welcome to the stream. Hope everyone's had a good week so far. Alright, well, when we last left off, Shojiro had to find a way to cohabitate with Miss Kwanji, and I don't foresee this going all that well. So we should probably jump right back in and see where this goes. Ah well. Moving into the grand mansion on the hill had not brought any major changes to Shojiro's day-to-day schedule. He woke up, went to his part-time job, ate breakfast, went to school. Classes came and went, still strange and new, broken up by rare and brief moments of rest until the school day ended. He left school, went to his part-time job, slept, woke up, studied for exams. A modest life for a modest young man, continuing every day in the same fashion despite his best efforts to change his fortune. Oh, that is a hella packed day. Damn. Nothing ever really changes. When Aoko was by his side in the mansion, as was frequently the case, or whether Alice was making him drink some potion she prepared before going to bed. The former was an attempt by Aoko to make him feel better. The latter was some attempt to keep him safe, even if he did not fully appreciate it. Then, one day, a day like any other, Shojiro was pouring himself some tea as he worried over the lack of change in his life.
ああ、そういえば。
His relationship with Alice was the same as ever, but there was one major change this morning. He was drinking black tea instead of green. How is that a major change? Just out of curiosity. Though there were all sorts of different types of tea to be found in the kitchen, a newcomer to the world of tea like Shojiro could not tell one of them from the next. Naturally, his tea-making skills were limited to tea bags, one of which he placed in his cup before returning to the dining table. Alice and Aoko were already seated. Oh, I'm choking on my tea. Sorry about that, guys. I'm choking on my own tea. The two were eating in silence. In this household, it was everyone for themselves when it came to breakfast. The diplomatic description of their breakfast would be simple. The more accurate description would be 2 slices of stale bread prepared in seconds. Aoko exchanged a word or two with Alice, took a sip of tea, stood up from her seat. Since it was winter break for the high schooler, Alice, she returned to her room after eating, as she normally did, while Aoko headed to the front door, shoes in hand, ready for school. After hurriedly clearing the table, Shojiro rushed out the door after Aoko. Together they walked down the long hill in the direction of the school. They had spent 3 days following this very simple routine.
ところで、あれから動きはあった？
School had ended and everything had arrived. Evening. Wow. Buttered bread rolled in one hand. Alice replied with a simple, silent shake of her head.
そう。ならあっちも次の手を考えているんでしょうね。魔術師本体の居場所は見当ついてる？
Her response was exactly the same. Without showing the slightest sign of dejection, she continued to chew the roll and took a stab at her salad.
そう。私も試験が終わったら手伝うから、それまで悪いけど一人でやってて。今日からあのバカを一夜漬けにしなくちゃいけないんで、余裕ないの。
Alice's face grew dour as if she had something to get off her chest.
問題ないでしょ？アリスはもう休みに入ってるんだから、一日全部使えるじゃない。
Alice was indeed on vacation and could spend all day, every day, on her work as a mage. Yet she had spent the past few days holed up in the library instead. She was hardly devoting herself to dealing with the challenger, as Aoko put it.
アリス？聞いてる？わかってる。今夜からそっちもやるから。
Well, she's obviously been up to something in the library. Oh, I know. It was Alice in the library with the candlestick. Yes, there we go. Sighing, she stood up. What was bothering Alice and what was it she wanted to say? Wow. What had she been doing only 2 hours earlier? The young witch took her leave from the breakfast table without offering a single clue. Mizaki High was a private school, and as such, its winter break started earlier than public schools. The end of term ceremony was in mid-December, followed by a brief respite before the next term began. Of course, that was if, and only if, they overcame the classic obstacle laying between them and an extended break from school: final exams. The radio continued its broadcast late into the night. A thermos of hot tea eliminated the need to venture down to the kitchen. An electric blanket kept away the winter cold, and a crab-shaped pastry starved off any dinner-time hunger. I want a crab-shaped pastry. I wonder what's in the crab-shaped pastry. These were the lengths Aoko had gone to. She needed to ensure that every aspect of her surroundings helped her to pull a successful all-nighter.
期末試験1日目、ご苦労様。それで、生まれ変わる覚悟できた？
Leave your old study habits behind and be reborn as a new student. Jeez, Aoko. Kogiro nodded earnestly. Upon returning from work, he encountered not the maid he expected, but the Demon Student Council president, Awazaki. Half a day earlier, The first day of exams were over, and Shojiro was about to head back to the mansion where he hoped to put his plan into practice when...
今夜、私の部屋で監禁ね。
That sounds ominous.
夕方からのアルバイトは当然キャンセル。ちょっと本気であの点数はありえないから。
Oh dear, we're crash cramming for the rest of the exam. A cold blue grin greeted him in the hallway. Clenched in her fist was Shojiro's exam paper. Mr. Yamashiro had no doubt said,
ま、転校してきたばかりだし、しょうがないよね。
but she had snatched the exam out of the teacher's hands the minute he tried to show her. That was how Shojiro had ended up in Aoko's room instead of the room in the attic to which he was accustomed. Though her situation was far from normal, at the end of the day, she was an adolescent girl like any other. Naturally, she felt uncomfortable letting a boy her own age into her room. However, its grades were truly something that called for desperate measures. That explained why her mood was even worse than normal today, and the vein on her forehead was pulsing visibly with anger. Oh shit.
先に自分の復習済ませる。
Then why am I here already if you have to finish your own studies first?
あんたはそのテーブル使ってて。
Aoko turned her back to him and sat down at her favorite desk. Funny, it looks like her only desk. Shojiro was left standing before a cheap-looking glass table.
なんかいろいろと慣れないな。なあ、青崎。この青いのなんだ？
Blue thing? Restless, Shojiro found his eyes drawn to the guitar propped up in the corner.
なんか薄いし青いしとんがってるし、きっと青崎のことだ
In
し。
blue, got intense looking, so it's got Aoko's name written all over it. Love it.
もしかしなくても武器か。
Well, that depends how good she is at playing it, I guess.
楽器よそれ。エレキはともかく、アコギは音楽室で似たようなのあったでしょ。
She's terrible at playing.
あとこれ以上青
Could
々
be
言ったら、
considered a weapon,
その
I
とんがって
guess.
るので殴るからね。
Or you can club somebody with it. Also works as... So yes, I guess it could be a weapon. Not sure you'd want to use it as one, though. But to each their own. Shojiro plopped himself down onto a cushion, struggling to suppress the desire to retort that it was a weapon after all.
ちょっとは落ち着きなさいよ。いつもは耳の遠い大型犬みたいに鈍感なくせに。何か気になるものでもあるの？
The fact it was Aoko who was oblivious for once. For his part, Shojiro could not figure out why he felt so restless either. Suffice it to say, they were both pretty clueless in this moment.
もしかして内装？この部屋の家具のグレードが今とは違うから不思議がってるのね。ここ。ベッド以外は私の家から持ち込んだものなの。引っ越してから2年経つけど、まだ屋敷には馴染んでないでしょ。
Though she misunderstood the real reason for Shojiro's nervousness, Aoko seemed satisfied that she had resolved Shojiro's anxiety for the time being and returned to her studies. She flipped through her notes and textbooks as if fast-forwarding a tape. There was no opening for an outsider like him to intrude in her high-speed study session. Repelled by her intensity, he retreated to his table. He was at least sensitive enough to pick up on her desire to be left alone. It was a testament to Shojiro that having his needs utterly ignored was now second nature to him, to the extent that he could now happily go about his business in solitude. That is a rough... That's just cold. What a way to live. Your basic human needs being ignored being second nature. Ouch. 2 hours passed. Then, as the clock neared 11, Aoko's speed and concentration began to slip. Seeing his window of opportunity, Shojiro seized the moment to strike up a conversation.
青崎、ちょっといいかな。
何？
She spoke hesitantly, not bothering to turn to face him. She continued to flip the pages of her textbook, albeit at a slower speed than before.
この3日間、青崎たちの夕食事情を見てきたけど、君たちの食事はいつもああなのか？
そうだけど、おかしい？
No, the two of you do not look normal at mealtime.
そう言われると困るな。
I suppose that's the safest answer right there. I don't know how to answer that.
ただ、学校じゃみんな楽しそうだった。誰かと食事をとるってことは、ああいう風になることだって思ってた。だから、もしかすると。
もしかしないわよ。別にあんたのせいでアリスと話さないわけじゃないわ。私たちはいつもああだから。
Aoko spoke calmly with her back still turned, seemingly unaware of what he was getting at.
張り詰めた食卓だな。青崎とアリスは仲がいいと思ってたのに。
Yeah, no, close friends they are not. She neither confirmed nor denied his statement. She was, however, surprised by the disappointed tone in which he had made it.
張り詰めた食卓っていうのは合ってるわね。アリスが何回あんたの飲み物にメスカリンを入れてたかなんてもう覚えてないし、昨日なんか堂々とサラダの中に7かまどなんか混ざってるし。ほんと、あの子何考えてるんだろう。
A bitter smile spread across her face in reminiscence. The pages of her textbook continued to turn.
メスカリン？
サボテンから取れるアルカロイドよ。アリスが使う以上、ただの幻覚剤じゃないでしょうけどね。と、私はこんなもんでいっか。
She's been spiking all his drinks with a hallucinogenic. Oh boy, this poor kid. With that, she slammed shut her fourth textbook of the night. After having scarcely changed position the whole night, she finally turned in her chair to face him.
さあ、今度はあんたを仕込まなくちゃね。今日の4科目の答案、実に宗十郎らしい出来栄えでそっとしそうになったわ、私。
Her tone was light, but her gaze was heavy, as she stared at Shojiro seated cross-legged on the floor.
原告、地理、数学、電子工学。あの調子であと2日続けたら、冬休みが消えるのは当然でしょうね。そうなると、困るのは私なのよ、実。
いや、俺も困るぞ。休みなのに学校に行くのは、なんか気が乗らない。
Shojiro calmly corrected her.
そりゃあ私のセリフだ。あんたが学校に行くってことは必然こっちまでとばっちりが来るっての。
All she could think about, as much as she tried to, was Mr. Yamashiro and his annoying grin.
それ以前に、私の目が黒いうちは、オール赤なんてやつは許さない。本来なら少年
Oh
から
my,
叩
he's
き直すと
failing
ころだけど、
absolutely everything? Oh shit. I didn't know he was doing that bad.
あんたはいろいろ事情があるから、とりあえず点数だけで勘弁してあげる。私もテストは一夜漬けで片付ける方だから、あんた一人仕込むのにそう時間はかからないだろうし。
Shujiro's expression openly soured in response to her declaration. It was obvious he did not think he needed her meddling in his studies.
あんたね、苦労するのは私とあなた、どっちだと思う？
Shujiro got the feeling that it would be him, but he nodded slowly nonetheless. Then again, it would probably take more effort on her part than on his, and in any case, he knew there was no way to talk her out of it.
この度はご迷惑をおかけします。
I love how she's smiling, but inside she's screaming. That is epic. I love it. Shojiro summarily bowed his head to show gratitude and willingness to work.
よろしい。安心なさい。私だって鬼じゃないから。
Are we sure about that?
別に平均点狙うってわけでもなし。予定通りこなしていけば3時には眠れるわよ。
She nodded with satisfaction, pleased by his studious attitude. He had plenty of obstacles ahead of him, but that sense of humility might be enough to see him through.
って何仏心出してるんだ私。いい？しずきくん。この後頼られちゃたまんないから釘刺しておくけど、私がマンツーマンで誰かを仕込むなんてことめったにないから。これはあくまで異例中の異例だって覚えておいてね。
She spoke more to convince herself than him, but his expression still darkened. It made one want to hang a sign. It made one want to hang a sign around his neck that read, "Please take me home," like an abandoned pet. Aoko chided herself for being so soft. For some reason, in that moment, she recalled that it had been raining the day they met each other. Time passed like the falling grains of an hourglass.
結局。
Why, she does not look happy. Aoko squinted as the light poured through the window, and she downed another cup of tea. She had lost count of exactly how many she had drank long ago.
一晩かかったね、大崎。
Shujiro picked up on what she'd left unspoken. Yeah, I think she left it unspoken for a reason. Aoko had used up all her pep in staying up all night, but also in shouting at him. He looked pale and uncomfortable, just as he had all night long.
ええ、甘く見てたわ、あんたのことを。
だから褒めても何も出ないって。
ある意味褒めるに値するかもね。
Paws so pat about that already. That would make an epic screenshot. Just saying. She was at the end of her rope, but she could not help the bit of pride that swelled up in her. His lack of even the most basic comprehension was shocking, even taking into account his upbringing in the wilderness. His ability was that of a middle school student, and that was being generous. Preparing him for exams by teaching him new concepts and ideas was a waste of time. Rote memorization was his only hope for passing. Everything he memorized could collapse like a house of cards afterwards for all she cared, so long as he remembered for his exams. Assuming he had the capacity to be a good student in the first place had been her mistake. It took all night to cover the content for just 4 exams, and she still did not feel confident he could apply what he so earnestly tried to memorize.
でもね、真面目なのはいいことだけど、あんた暗記するのに時間かかりすぎ。
そこは多めに見てほしい。今まで頭より体で覚えることのが多かったんだ。
I see. He's better at learning by doing things. Gotcha. Me too. Aoko let out an exasperated sigh. Naturally, physical prowess mattered more in mountain life than intellectual kind. But still.
まあいいわ。これで山城からあんたの成績について相談されることもないでしょうし。紅茶、もう一杯入れてくれる？
Really? You want Shojiro to make the tea? Shojiro stood up and obeyed as Aoko stretched her aching back. She had apparently bought the tea bags in bulk, so there were still plenty to use.
まったく無駄遣いだな、青崎は。
He spoke under his breath so she wouldn't hear. It made him somehow happy to see her so tired and unfocused after the grueling all-night session she had given him. It did not cross his mind that the excess tea bags, far from being an indulgent purchase, were purchased intentionally to sustain them through the night. A relaxed expression came across Aoko's face as she watched him, naive and peaceful as could be.
悪くないけど、せめてリーフティーで入れられるように仕込まなくちゃダメかな。
I have to admit, tea made from loose leaves is, for whatever reason, tastes better than bagged tea. Don't know why. Maybe it's just me. Seeming not to have overheard her not-so-inner monologue, Shojiro made to face her.
やっぱり味は違うのか？
違う、もう全然。正直私はどうでもいいんだけど、アリスはね、かなりお茶にはうるさいよ。そうだ、宗十郎、アリスとうまくいってる？
Terrible, apparently. Aoko cheerfully slumped over the table, now covered with textbooks and scribed notes. Shojiro watched her with a hint of resentment in his eyes.
彼女と会えるのは食事の時だけで、食事と言ったらあれだろ？どうやって仲良くなれって言うんだ。
そう？私は十分脈ありだと思ったけど。そっちはアリスを怖がってないし、アリスはそっちを追い出す理由を見つけようと躍起になってるし。
Yeah, those aren't reasons enough to try.
いい条件よ、これって。
全然わからないな。あの子とこっちの関係は遊園地前の青崎と俺の関係と同じじゃないか。一体どこがいい条件なんだ？
I mean, I suppose there is a very distinct similarity between the two circumstances.
とりあえず反目し合ってはいないでしょ。
At
一
least
方
not at
通
the
行の関
moment.
係だけど、それはそれ。アリスにしちゃ上出来っていうか、理由を探している時点で可能性ありってね。あの子は反感に応えることが癖になっちゃってるから、大抵相手を自滅させちゃうのよ。
Ominous words only confused Shojiro further.
知ってしまえば単純な話なんだけどね、あの子の場合。ただ、
Whether or not he could put it into practice was another story altogether.
難しいよ、青崎は。
He carried their teacups back to the table as he spoke. Aoko picked hers up and took a sip as if to dispel her exhaustion.
でも、確かに君の言う通りだ。俺はまだあの子の顔しか知らない。クオンジ・アリスという名前すら定かじゃないのは問題があるね。
Well, I mean, it doesn't end with her name. You know, she's a mage, although I guess at the end of this little stay, we're gonna forget that. But, what else do we know about Alice? Wow, we really don't know much, do we? Crappy deal. He followed Aoko's lead and took a sip of his own. His cup contained not tea but plain hot water. Wait, what? Where's the tea?
あの子のこと教えてほしい？
Aoko scrutinized him carefully as she sat. Most boys would have been captivated by her gaze in that moment.
いや、そういうことは本人に聞いてあげるべきだと思う。
But he ignored her and stared straight ahead as if speaking directly to Alice herself.
そうね。あんたってアリス好みの対応をするわ。ねえ、前から気になってたけど、客室でアリスに何を言ったの？いくら私との約束とはいえ、あの子が部外者を半日も放置するなんてありえないのよ。
He thought back to that moment. Honestly, I don't remember what he said to her either. He could recall only 2 or 3 words he had exchanged with Alice after awaking in the guest room. He did not recall the conversation being anything special, but he could bring himself to casually share it with Aoko now. After all,
ねえ、どんなセリフであの子の気を変えたの？
Aoko eagerly pressed him for answers. Shujiro frowned, unsure of what to say. He did not know what the interaction had been like for Alice, but for him, it had felt special, sacred almost. The question was, why and for whom was he so concerned?
ほら、白状しなさいってば。隠し事なんて似合わないわよ。
I think it's more that you're dying to know. Her disconcerting smile moved even closer. Shujiro did not look like he was able to stay silent much longer. As he would eventually come to realize, Aoko Awazaki had sometimes troubling propensity to gossip.
まあ、あの子と何を話したかは言わないけど、今の青崎に比べれば花もロマンもなかったのだけは確かかな。さっきまでは青崎が鬼みたいだったからいいもんだなって気がつかなかった。
He stared directly into her eyes as he spoke. Oh, that is brave as hell, buddy. Naoko nearly leapt out of her seat in panic. Now that he pointed it out, she realized their bodies were practically touching.
仕方ないでしょ。この方が効率良かったんだから。あんた、横にいないとすぐ間違えるし。
Aoko stood up as she lashed back at him.
そうだね。なんか昔みたいで久しぶりに集中できた。これが異例中の異例っていうのが本当に残念だ。
Exception among exceptions.
余裕あるじゃない。その分じゃ今日のテストだけじゃなく、アリスとの話し合いもうまくいきそうね、宗十郎。
I don't know about that.
それはもちろん。
But I guess we'll see. His cool response caught her off guard, and for a moment, she was at a loss for words. She meant it sarcastically, and yet he responded with a warm smile.
方針変更だ。まずは近くで話しかけてみるよ。嫌なことはいずれ終わるって分かったから。
That could go very badly. Very badly. Aoko remained in a state of silent shock as he spoke and rose to his feet. She could not help but feel a reluctant respect for what seemed to be his newfound confidence and competence.
とりあえず今日は一人で帰ってアリスと話してみる。青崎は放課後生徒会だろ。
He was right. It was their last meeting before winter break. Normally, he would have waited until the meeting ended, or else gone straight to his part-time job. This part of Aoko's plan to make sure he and Alice were never alone in the mansion together.
待った。まさかあんた、一人でアリスとやり合うつもりなの？
別にやり合うつもりはないぞ。し合っても勝てないだろう、アリスには。
His reply made complete sense, which floored her.
でも、青崎がいたら話が複雑になるのは目に見えてるんだ。そんなわけで、今日はゆっくり飛び丸の相手でもしててくれ。
Well, it depends. Do you want Aoko to take her time beating him up or talking to him? Because, I mean, she could do
本
both.
気？
He felt like he was being tested, but nodded nonchalantly nonetheless, knowing how grave the situation really was. Aoko was not sure how to respond to his apparent lack of concern. The morning light came through the window, marked a stark contrast between the two. Which stood bathed in light, which lurked in darkness. That went without saying. The silence lasted only a brief moment. Staring at him gravely, she said,
そう。なら止めはしないわ。
"Basically your funeral." That was all she had. Her dry tone hid the significance of their pregnant silence. Okay. Not really sure I'd ever really put those two words in the same part of a sentence before, but all right. Not revealing the slightest sign of discord.
なんか怒ってないか、青崎。
別に。それで何か考えはあるの？下手な考えは通じないわよ、あの子には。
Shujiro furrowed his brow in deep thought. He knew it would be hard to get close to her through talk alone. In fact, it felt nearly impossible.
言葉で落ちないやつは物で釣れ。
Kinomi had been the voice of wisdom and folly for him countless times in the past. Incidentally, Kinomi had been referring to Aoko at the time he shared that pearl of wisdom. But Shojiro had the distinct impression that trying to buy Awazaki's kindness with gifts would not end well.
だいたいアリスの趣味もわからないじゃない
Tea!
か。
She already told you! Tea! Get her very, very expensive tea!
考えてみると、今の自分と彼女はまるで接点がない。
Shojiro crossed his arms at a loss.
いつものことだけど、何も考えてなかったわけね。
うん。でもまあ、あれこれ考えなくてもいいと思う。アリスにはあれこれ説明するとか、分かってもらおうとか、そういうんじゃなくて、なんていうか。
He pondered intently as he tried to put his vague thoughts into something concrete. But he did not spend much time in thought. With a nod, he concluded.
要は、俺が彼女を好きかどうかってことじゃないか?
Sure, I guess. He articulated that which is often so hard to say with surprising clarity and calm. It was certainly a prerequisite for the task he hoped to achieve. He had no hope of making her appreciate him with words, or with acts of giving with the expectation of reciprocation. He simply wished to get to know her better because he liked her. That was his honest, uncontrived intention, and it reflected the purity of his heart. But whether that was in his best interest or not was another story altogether. Calculation and compromise, selfishness and conflict. Purity such as his often irritated people who believed that morals went against human nature. Or rather, people who were inevitably forced to believe it. Aoko silently walked away without responding to what Shojiro had said. Her long hair swung from side to side as she passed by.
Awazaki?
Noting her strangely cold manner, he called out to her. However, she was already opening the door to leave.
下でシャワー浴びてくるから、あなたは自分の部屋に戻ってて。
Her words lacked any expressive inflection. In his confusion, all Shojiro could do was nod.
いいけど、やっぱり怒ってないか、青崎。
Emotions returned to her face as he spoke. Yet it was not the typical irritated look to which he had grown so accustomed.
そうね。あんた流に言えば、多分私は怒ってる。何に対してのものかは、あんまり言いたくないけど。
I mean, fair enough. She doesn't have to. Poor Shojiro did not even realize that he himself was the reason. She looked at him for an instant. He witnessed an emotion on her face of which he had never seen the likes of before.
じゃあね。これが最後になるかもしれないから、お別れぐらいは言っておくわ。あなたはアリスを甘く見すぎてる。でも、それが同時にあんたの強みなのよね。私たちには、毒にし。
The door slammed loudly shut behind her. Her steps were audible as she walked away on the other side of the wall. The corridor must have been nearly freezing without any central heating, but Aoko seemed perfectly comfortable.
なんで私から出ていくんだ。順番が逆。普通先に出てくのはそっちじゃない。
Aoko promptly kicked Shojiro out of her room. Once again, the wooden door closed with a slam. The corridor was not as cold as he had expected. Not quite as bad as a freezer, at least. Stretchy, stretchy. The second day of exams ended, and Shojiro was on his way back to the mansion. The road grew steeper and the woods thicker as he made his way up the familiar slope. People in the town called it not a hill, but a mountain, simply because it took over 20 minutes to climb. This did not sit well with Shojiro, for whom a mountain was something that could not be overcome so easily. The road was paved, for one thing, and the canopy overhead let plenty of sunlight to guide the way. None of the inclines were especially steep, and no animals lurked in the underbrush. There were no chance of losing his way, no reason to worry about getting lost.
情けない。まだ未練ばっかりだ。
Shojiro quietly reprimanded himself for getting so wrapped up in his own little world. In the past few weeks since moving here, he had been constantly comparing the town to his former mountain one. Normally, he would not get upset over it, but in recent days, since meeting Aoko, as it happened, he had become rather hung up on the differences. The reason for this eluded him, but he knew that Aoko was a force that could not be stopped. This naturally made him want to quicken his own pace. The mansion where they both lived was the antipathy of her lively personality. It stood out like a sore thumb, even in a town like Mizaki. Some people said it was haunted. There were no ghosts, per se, but it was inhabited by magicians, so their claims were closer to the truth than they could possibly know.
そういえば、幽霊と魔法使いっていうのは、どっちが常識外れなんだろう。
Lost in contemplation as he was, the boy failed to notice how his own lack of familiarity with city life played into the equation. In any case, none of his pondering changed what needed to be done. Tomorrow was the last day of exams. That meant he only had a little longer until Aoko stopped taking responsibility for his safety. If possible, today was going to be the day when the mansion's owner accepted his continued residence there. Shojiro slipped between the trees encircling the mansion and walked down the naturally tree-lined avenue that led to the front door. Here we go. Oh, never mind. He couldn't say it himself. Taking a deep breath, he stepped across the threshold. The drawing room was where he expected to find Alice. However, he found himself face to face with a most unexpected scene. A few steps in, he arrived at the large foyer extended from the mansion's entrance. But one thing was clearly out of place. The foyer of a mansion was like a hall in a medieval castle. It was illuminated by the cold winter sun cast down through the skylight, unaided by artificial light. The wooden tiles smelled of the outdoors. And there was Alice, dressed all in black, huddled against a column so enormous it resembled a sharply cornered tree trunk. The mansion was quite literally supporting her frail body. Like a mother's lullaby or gently rocking cradle. The heavy atmosphere within this old building suppressed even the slightest stir, almost as if warding away any disturbance to her slumber. That is definitely an odd place to be sleeping. There she slept in the shadows of home. Hey Dawson, I'm really enjoying it so far, to be perfectly honest. It's been a lot of fun. Learning a lot about these characters. It's been a heck of a ride so far. Sugiro instinctively looked up at the ceiling out of sheer awkwardness. He wanted to surprise her, but not in this way. Her slender frame lay asleep by the fireplace. The scene was as beautiful as a painting, yet hard on his heart at the same time. Her slumber seemed breathless. She was too still, with not even a hint of movement. Oh yeah, you read it before you read Fate? Well, don't spoil anything for me or anyone else, okay? And yet, slumped against that frigid column under the cold winter sky, happiness appeared to be her blanket. A passerby could not be blamed for thinking she was in the most peaceful state of eternal slumber, death. Alice is your favorite girl in this one? I'm kind of torn, honestly, between Alice and Aoko. Sugiro spoke to himself as he gazed idly upon her. Bringing her a blanket or something warm did not so much as cross the boy's mind. Instead, odd as it sounds, the first thing he thought to do was go to prepare some tea. He made sure to be as quiet as possible as he opened the drawing room door. On the table waiting for him were 3 pills. So Dawson, why is Alice your favorite? What has happened so far? Well, Aoko asked Sugiro to meet him at the amusement park at the House of Mirrors, where she intended to kill him, but then the 2 of them were jumped by a puppet that attacked Aoko. So they managed to get away from the puppet, but as they were exiting the amusement park, or trying to get away anyway, they ran into Alice, who also attacked them with her with a couple of her ploys, and so Aoko unleashed her. I can only describe it as a Kamehameha on the moon and blew it up, because, that's just how that shit works. And so now the three of them are living in Alice's mansion until exams are done, and Shojiro is trying to get Alice to agree to his cohabitation without getting himself killed. Or put back in a bottle, which has already happened once already. I think that about sums up everything that's happened so far. They were the medicine Aoko required him to take every day when he arrived home. Gulping down a vaguely sweet pills and continuing to the kitchen, he selected a box of tea from among the many in the cabinet and brewed enough for two. Her personality and the goth look. I see. The goth look and her personality do suit each other very well. She's a very well-written character, I have to admit. Alice was still asleep when he returned to the foyer. Carefully, not to make any noise, he crouched close to the ground. He was startled by how cold the floor felt through his pants. He thought it would be warmer here by the fireplace, but then again he recalled how Aoko had referred to it as a useless hole in the wall. What was likely the case was that neither she nor Alice knew how to use it properly. After taking the teacups from the tray and placing one in front of each of them, Shojiro carefully pulled his textbook on classical literature from his satchel.
青崎、怒ってたからな。
I mean, when isn't Aozaki mad at you, man? Come on. I think that's been a natural state of being for Aoko since she met you. He could still see her angry face from this morning. The reason for her anger was still as much a mystery as the unusual look he saw briefly before coming across her face. He saw briefly come across her face. Oh yeah. I don't know if Tsukihime is actually on Steam yet. I have to keep checking. I hope I could do that one as well. That would be sweet. I rather enjoy Tsukihime. In any case, one thing was certain: he needed to start studying for tomorrow. Like I said, I'm gonna have to double check to see if Tsukihime's on Steam. Hopefully it is. If not, I may have to go scrounging around the internet for some sort of copy that I could do. Thanks to Aoko's instructions, today's exam went well enough, but tomorrow's would be an even more formidable challenge. After how angry she was this morning, he could not expect her to help him again tonight.
そのくせ点数悪いと怒るし、別に青崎が怒る筋合いじゃないと思う。
I haven't actually read the visual novel, at least not all of it. Most of what I know about Tsukihime I got from the ridiculously condensed anime. So, I mean, and I know with that one they tried to put like all 3 routes into one, like, what is it, 12 episode run. It was a terrible idea, but I mean, I guess they got the point across. I recently watched the Karano Kyoke waifu files. I really enjoyed it. I think that one's my favorite waifu file so far. He complained under his breath as he cracked open his textbook. I haven't caught up totally with all the waifu files yet. I've been kind of busy, unfortunately. But I think, yeah, I mean, it's not the worst anime ever. I mean, it was pretty poorly done. I will give it that. It was poorly done. Apparently, he intended to spend his time in this fashion until Alice finally awoke. I get it. You were talking about the Tsukihime one being the worst anime ever. I'm not sure I'd call it the worst anime ever, but it was piss poorly done. There was no ticking of clocks or rushing of leaves to disturb her sleep. After a few hours, Shojiro quietly rose to his feet. The light that filled the foyer was beginning to turn from white to red.
そろそろバイトの時間か。
He glanced again at Alice as he stretched his stiff back. She slept in perfect stillness as she had this entire time. Shojiro arched his brow in speculation. He had no idea what her normal sleeping schedule was like, so he had no idea as to whether he should wake her. Yeah, the anime was a huge disappointment for you because you're a big fan of Tsukihime. I get that. I get how that would make you feel disappointed. I totally get it. I feel the same way about not every, the vast majority of all the live action adaptations of animes that have been done. 99.99% of them are absolute garbage and trash and should never have been made. So I get how you feel. I love CL2. She's freaking awesome.
いや、青崎も帰ってくるだろうし、いらぬ世話かな。
As if reaching the end of a long train of thought, Shojiro gave a quick nod of his head and took his leave of the mansion. Today, work was a shift at the Chinese restaurant in Mizaki's shopping district, the Mad Bear. That is an odd name for a Chinese restaurant. Am I the only one that thinks that is an odd ass name for a Chinese restaurant? Oh, I mostly agree. The only live action that I've seen that is even okay, no. I have to retract that statement. The One Piece live action is really good. It's the only one that I will ever so far say has been any good. The rest all are garbage that should never have been made, in my opinion. Their uniforms had been made by someone with obvious preference for garish colors. The orange apron was emblazoned with the cartoonish polar bear slashing a walk in two with its powerful claws. The design resembled warning signs about wild animals seen in the mountains and stood out in Miyazaki for its one-of-a-kind originality. One-of-a-kind is definitely right. The Wild Bear Chinese restaurant, that is some... I've never heard that one before. That is a weird-ass name. They better have damn good food, though. This was the Chinese restaurant, the Mad Bear. Aside from its name and logo, the restaurant was the type of cheap hole-in-the-wall dive that could be found anywhere. Well, so much for the food being good. Damn it. It faced competition from the ever-increasing number of chain restaurants, though it had managed to last longer than the other dwindling shops, having received rave reviews on a regular basis. I like Parasite the guy. I guess, maybe. The Mad Bear prioritizes the personal touch, focusing on its local clientele, and thus made a point to offer home delivery. It had earned the affectionate moniker, the Quick Killer Stop. Quick Killer Stop? Okay. Making these deliveries was Shojiro's responsibility for the time being. Places in Miyazaki with cycling distance fell under his domain. Anything beyond that was handled by a more experienced staff member on the legendary 50cc King Salmon motorbike. But anyway, we digress.
ヤシロギのダチから聞いたんだけどな。
When delivery workers were not out on deliveries, they spent their shift bussing tables or washing dishes. What about Gray? And, I mean, which Gray are we referring to? The dinner rush was yet to come, and Shojiro and his fellow delivery boys were shooting the breeze while washing dishes in the back.
聞いてるか、しずき。
聞いてるよ、木の実。
The two were elbow deep in a giant sink as they enthusiastically scrubbed. At least, that was what they pretended to do while they gossiped.
和食のケニアだけじゃねえんだってよ。三崎町の大帝都にもメシアンにもその手の注文があったらしいぜ。そんなに肉が欲しいなら下市に行けばいいのにな。なんだって生肉だの大物の鮭丸ごとだのを出前させやがるのか。
Oh, it's called Parasite the Grey. I have not heard of this one.
どうよ。こう露骨にヤバそうな話じゃね？ワニとかアザラシでも飼ってるんじゃねえかな、そいつ。
Do tell, what's it about, Dawson? I might want to read it or watch it, depending on which format I can find it most easily in.
他に比べてみると確かに珍しい話だと思う。ところで木の実、ワニってなんだ？
ワニはワニだろう。だっせ、実物見たことないのかよ。まあ俺もねえけどな。今度ガクガク動物ランドのアフリカ特集ビデオを貸してやるから見とけよ。
What, are you trying to traumatize poor Shojiro? That's not very nice. This was a familiar pattern of conversation between the two, especially now Kinomi was used to Shojiro's lack of general knowledge. Their banter was interrupted by the delivery phone. The manager snapped up the receiver and quickly jotted down the order and address. I have not watched it. I'm gonna have to check it out. What's it about? Once he hung up, everyone in the kitchen did their best to avoid making eye contact with him. Nobody wanted to go rushing out for a delivery on such a cold day.
しずきくん、ちょっと遠いけど配達をお願い。
The manager singled out Shojiro for the task, seemingly unfazed by his staff's laziness.
はいこれ、届けるもののリスト。異例だからあまり他のバイトには他言しないようにね。
The manager tore the sheet with the order and address written on it from his memo pad. Shojiro took one look at it before a grimace quietly spread across his face.
マネージャー？
なんだい？
The manager stared right back at him as if he could tell what it was he wanted to say.
君の疑問はもっともだ。しかしまあ、長いことこの商売をやっていると、時にはこんなバカな話が転がってくることも
What's written on the paper?
そうおかしなことじゃない。じゃあ、冷蔵庫から品物持ってくるから。
Shojiro stared in admiration as the manager, dressed in black, marched out of the kitchen in his all-business way. Nowhere was free from odd occurrences now and then. No? Not gonna tell me what's on the paper.
遅い。
It was after 10 at night. Shojiro had taken a small detour on his way home from work and now faced an outraged Aoko, as expected. Seeing her so visibly irritated made him feel a rush of relief. Why would you feel relief at seeing Aoko be all pissy? What the hell? I'm so confused. This Shojiro, he makes no sense to me. He did not know why she was angry, but he could tell it was a different type of anger than what he saw earlier that morning.
遅いってまだ10時になったばかりだろう。どうしたんだ？
He sat down the cardboard box he had been carrying in his arms and glanced toward the fireplace. The sleeping girl was there no more.
違うわ。もう10時になったの間違いでしょ。あんたってほんと自分がどんな状態にあるか分かってないのね。
We have no clue why you're busy this time.
いいから今に来て。
What, were we supposed to not leave Alice asleep, leaned up on the column? She walked briskly to the room without pausing, leaving Shojiro standing in confusion, head tilted to one side. He proceeded to pick his box back up and followed after her eagerly. He removed his coat and hung it on a hanger as he entered the living room. Apparently, today was one of those days where Alice kept herself locked away in her room. It's about humans that have to deal with parasite that acts like a human, that goes into a human brain, but the main guy doesn't get it in his brain, so him and his parasite work together to kill other parasites. Okay. Parasite the Grey. I'll have to check that out. Yay, another anime to watch. Woo! On the table were the familiar pills.
説明しなかった私も悪いけど、あなたも帰ってくる時間は守ってよね。こっちはそのつもりで作ってるんだから。
Aoko handed him the pills and a glass of water with an expectant look on her face. It sounds like it could be a really good anime. I'll have to check it out. I don't think I'm currently in the middle of any series. I think I'm between series right now, so yeah, I should be able to check that out fairly soon. I'll have to check my schedule and see what my paying job and YouTube has me doing over the next little bit here.
薬なら出かける前に飲んだけど、体の調子だって悪くないし、そんなに慌てることか?
Okay, so Parasite the Grey is the new. What's the original? So if it's kind of like a follow-up to it, what's the original one? Because I want to watch that first.
は？なんだって私たちがあんたの健康を気にかけなくちゃいけないのよ。勘違いしてるようだけど、あんたが帰ってくるたびに飲んでるのって、平たく言えば毒よ。
Wait, what? They're poison? What the hell?
即効性じゃないから、効き目は半日すると出てくるんだけど、その前に新しい毒薬を飲んでおかないと、古い毒が体に回ってばったりいくって寸法ね。
Oh crap.
アリスのやつ、これぐらいしないと信用できないって言い張ったのよ。
That's a pretty short rope.
ほら、分かったらさっさと飲む。ま、私もこれ面倒だと思うし。近いうち、もっと形のある方法を考えてみるから、それまでこの方法で我慢して。
言ってることは支離滅裂だが、とにかく今まで良くないものを飲んでたんだな。
Okay, so Parasite the Maximum is the anime, and Parasite the Grey is a live action that kind of happens after the end. Okay. Gotcha. I understand how that works now. Yay! Light dawns on Marblehead for Kitty. Shojiro took the pills from her and gulped it down. The fact that it was poison gave him no pause at all. And for his roommate's tyrannical behavior, he showed no sign of standing up to it.
まったく毒を持って毒を制するなんてまた古風な真似するな、青崎もアリスも。
Fujiro's face relaxed into a smile upon finding the funny side of the situation. Aoko was utterly dumbfounded as how he could be so happy at a time like this.
今日帰りが遅れたのはアパートまで荷物を取りに行っていたからなんだ。そういうことなら電話の一つでもすればよかった。
荷物ってまさかそれじゃないでしょうね。
Fujiro nodded empathetically as he pointed incredulously at the cardboard box in his hands.
住んでいないのに家賃を払うのはバカらしいから今日で引き上げてきた。一応いつでも戻れるように話はつけてあるから3ヶ月ぐらいは大丈夫だよ。
家賃？あ、そっか。そうよね。
Oh, yeah, he has his own
私
place,
け
you
どなんでそんなことを
dumbass.
忘れてたんだろう。アリスが聞いたら喜ぶわ、そりゃ。
Oh, okay, that's the backstory of Parasite the Maxim. Perfect. I will definitely have to watch that anime and then check out the live action that follows it up. How'd they do on the live action, by the way? Would you say that it was it a fail or a pass? A smile blossomed across her face as they say. It was the open, bold-faced look of a child who just came up with a mischievous plan. Shugiro shook with fear at the thought of what that smile might bring his way.
けどずいぶん少ないのね、荷物。段ボール1箱分しかないの？
そうかな。十分多いだろう。それよりアリスは自室か？
ちょっと前に戻ったわ。珍しく食後もここに残ってたんだけど、待ちきれなかったみたいね。
He gave Shojiro a meaningful look while continuing to smile, that sinister smile.
待ちきれなかったって何を？
Apparently you got tired of waiting for you. Oh, it's good like the One Piece live action. Damn, that is high praise, Dawson, because One Piece actually got the formula for live action adaptations right. So if it's good like the One Piece live action, I'm definitely gonna have to check that out. Thank you for adding that to my list. I truly appreciate some good viewing. Awesome. I'm gonna enjoy it.
そりゃあ、アリスが眠ってるのをいいことに、在庫のないフォションとブルーキャリコを勝手に使ってくれたどこかの誰かさんにお仕置きするためなんじゃない？
Oh boy. Apparently that tea we made her was the last of that particular kind. Uh-oh. We might be in trouble.
フォッションってあのお茶の葉？
そう。私もびっくりしたけどね。アリスがどっかで寝入るのはよくあることだけど、紅茶を用意して眠るなんてのは初めてだったから。
Well, I recently watched that new CG Netflix Gundam. That was actually pretty good. It was better than I thought it was gonna be, to be honest. Let's see, what other series have I recently watched? Wow, I haven't really been watching much anime lately. I've been really busy, unfortunately. So, yeah, unfortunately, I think the only thing I watched recently, as far as anime is concerned, would be that new Gundam on Netflix, and I guess the ending of My Hero Academia. I watched it recently. No, actually, I haven't had a whole lot of time on my hands. Been pretty busy, unfortunately. I tell you what, the next by the next stream, I will have watched at least one episode of Black Lagoon and Parasite. I make this vow right here, right now. I will have watched at least one episode of both of those by the next stream.
どんな心境の変化か知りたくて起こしたら、アリスの方が驚いてたわ。一体誰の仕業なんだって。
Shujiro clapped his hands together as if remembering something important. He had forgotten to clean up the tea before leaving. The regret written from forehead to chin delighted Aoko immensely.
そうか。それじゃあアリスは怒っていただろう。
当然。コマドリがとばっちりでドリブルされてたしね。
ああ、俺でも怒る。片付けをきちんとしないなんて、だらしないにも程がある。
It's in your top 10 of all time. Nice. I am looking forward to it. I have some more editing to do on the next One Piece episode. That'll be coming out on, what, Friday? I guess tomorrow. Damn. I have a little bit more editing to do on that before I upload that. Then I should have a little bit of free time to go check those anime out. Shujiro harshly scolded himself for his failure.
論点違う。あのね、寝顔を間近で見られたから怒ってるのよ、アリスは。
She's not. What she's mad about is the fact that you just sat there and watched her sleep.
え？そうかな。アリスはそういうのは気にしないと思うんだけど。
I'm not sure what she's so mad about either.
あんたはそうかもしれないけど、私たちは気にするの。
Aoko's glare was enough to make glass shatter. There was an incredible intensity in the way she said that.
それは青崎たち限定の話か？
世間一般での常識よ。自分が気にしないからって他人もそうだと思ってると、いつかやけどするからね。
うん。でもそれだったらロビーで寝ているアリスにだって問題ないか？見かけたら放っておけないだろう、あんなの。
その心意気は立派だけど、そこはそれ。この館の持ち主は彼女だから。この洋館内であなたが出会ったあらゆる不義不始末、失敗失態の責任は宗十郎に押し付けられるの。
You hope it gets a season 2? Well, if it's done as well as One Piece was, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't.
この意味、わかる？
Yeah, that's what I mean. If it did as well as the live action One Piece did, then you know, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't get a season 2. I mean, hell, look at the dumpster fire that is Rings of Power. It's getting a season 3.
つまりここはアリスの自治領なんだ
I mean,
な。
they're just pouring money into that dumpster fire. So, I mean, if it's good, I don't see why it shouldn't get a season 2.
はい、よくできました。正確には私とアリスのだけどね。領主は何をやっても許されるってことよ。
We already covered the what you and Alice say goes. Come on. She smiled as she spoke and plopped herself down on the sofa. Shojiro remained standing behind the sofa opposite her as he ran over their conversation again and again in his head. Nine out of 10. Nice. It's a pretty high rating you're giving it there, Dawson. I'll take your word for it, though. The notion of this being their kingdom made him realize he actually had no idea where the girls had come from or their family's background.
青崎、君ご両親はどうしてるんだ？
Like cyberpunk edge runners. Ooh. You're making it sound better all the time. He inadvertently blurted out, this time being the question foremost on his mind.
生きてるわよ。三崎町から下りに4駅行った東川ってところの地主。死は祖父だけど、今は隠居して両親と一緒の土地に住んでるわ。
そう聞くとなんだか普通の家庭だな。
Yeah, sure, normal family. Yup. Shojiro had imagined something more outrageous for a family of magicians.
両親はね、父さんにはあんまり魔術回路は作られなかったみたいだから、その分私には2世代分の潜在能力があるって祖父は言ってるけど、どうだか。宗十郎の期待してるような一族はどっちかっていうとアリスの方よ。私と違って英国出身だからね、彼女。
It would be nice if Edge Runners got a Blu-ray. Maybe sometime in the future. We can keep hoping. Aoko offered nothing more, as if to suggest that that was as far as she was willing to reveal for now. Shujiro had insisted on talking to Alice directly rather than hearing things secondhand, so chose not to go back on his word by pushing this topic further.
ま、詳しくは本人から聞きなさい。アリスの紅茶好きもそこから来てるんだし。そういえば、なんで今日に限ってリーフティーなんか入れたの？ティーバッグを使った方がまだマシだったでしょうに。
青崎がそっちの方がいいって言ったじゃないか。アリスは紅茶にうるさいって。
She did say that tea leaves, that loose leaf tastes better, and I agree. And that Alice is picky about her tea, so... Aoko was momentarily at a loss for words. He seemed so oblivious most of the time that apparently he was attentive to some details, at least selectively.
ま、いいわ。それより明日の放課後だけど、また一人で帰ってくれない？年明けの行事があるんだけど、その場しのぎで行った餅つき大会が通っちゃってさ、明日も忙しいのよ、私。
Mochi making festival? That does sound like fun. Shujiro nodded in acceptance. In fact, he had already been planning to do so before she'd even asked.
それはいいけど、体は大丈夫か、青崎。昨日から寝てないだろう。
夕方に3時間ちょい仮眠を取ったから調子はいいわ。
Quick
そういう
3-hour
あんた
nap,
こ
so
そ
good.
体は持つんでしょうね。もう少ししたら昨日の続き始めるわよ。
I did hear about that, Dawson. I am so happy. Yeah, we just have to keep calling out their BS, and eventually we'll get all our censorship for the games and whatnot rolled back, because I mean it has gotten way too far. Yeah, I did hear about that recently. I'm super happy. Needless to say, Shojiro was more than likely to struggle, given that he too had not slept a wink. All he could do was give a relieved smile. He thought back to the day just after he transferred here, when she watched his every move from the sidelines and showed a starting amount of concern for him.
いいよ。どのみち苦労するのは青崎の方だし、異例中の異例はありがたく受け取っておくとしよ
His cheery response grated on her just a little.
ほんと、くだらないことだけはしつこく覚えてるんだから。
She heaved her shoulders in exasperation and dropped her head as an excuse to look away from the beaming smile on his face. Avowed, oh yeah, that really bad Dragon Age game was a cash grab. I agree. It was for Dragon Age, that was really badly done, that one. The last day of finals had ended without a hitch. The final December hurdle was finally a thing of the past. For all but one student, that is. To Shojiro, the greatest challenge was yet to come. He bid farewell to his classmates, all jittery with excitement for the last day of term, and headed into the Rowanzuka woods. The road home was no different than yesterday. Like he was reliving yet another day striding up the hill. Yet today there was a fierce determination in his steps. Today was his last chance, and he wanted nothing more than to talk to the girl. He did not care if she was cruel to him or ignored him, nor whether Aoko was being truthful when she said that she could trap him in a mirror land, or something like that. All he really cared about was having the chance to speak with her face to face. Absolutely. I totally agree with you, Dawson. All I want in a game is good gameplay, good story, like a well written story, well written characters, and gameplay mechanics that make sense and flow. That's really not much to ask. But no, apparently it's like, here, have a loot box and just go about your day. That's not what we want, man. So I wholly agree on that one. But nothing is ever that simple. To tell the truth, what he found upon finally entering the mansion was not wholly unexpected.
よく寝る子だな、本当。
Are she sleeping? She's sleeping there again? The deja vu he was experiencing made him dizzy. Faced with an exact reenactment of the previous day, he could not help but blurt out what he was thinking. Alice was sleeping by the fireplace, just as she had done yesterday. The way her legs draped to one side resembled those of a princess in a children's book. She looked more comfortable than she had the day before. Miraculously, he had a rare flash of insight that enabled him to read the situation more clearly.
学校で飛び丸は一人何をしているんだろ
Upon glancing back at the entrance, he made his decision, took a deep breath, and rolled up his sleeves. If today was a reenactment of yesterday, then he supposed he would play along with that idea. Shojiro removed his shoes and headed for the kitchen. He was off to prepare another ill-fated pot of tea. That poor tea's gonna go undrank on the floor again. Since she was angry about him using her precious Fushan, this time he turned to Jackson's fruit and herb brew. Sadly, this was about as much as Shojiro could manage to amend his behavior. He had failed to realize that it was not the brand of tea that had landed him in hot water, but rather his incorrect brewing method. After filling the pot with tea, he carried it back to the foyer. His breath was visible in the cold air as he sat himself down by the fireplace. Shojiro took a sip of the fruity tea he'd prepared for himself and pulled his textbook from his bag. Exams were over now, but he had been instructed to take extra classes for the subjects from day one of school. Quite inevitable. The foyer was warmer than outside, but still far from comfortable. It was enough to make anyone yearn for some source of warmth. Shojiro dove into his electronics textbook in the winter-chilled hall. Yeah, I hate it. You walk into a town and the NPCs aren't actually doing anything. Just irritates the hell out of me. It's like, come on. The least you could do is give me some semblance of, like being in the game. Like, just utterly destroying the fourth wall like that by having the NPCs just stand in place and wait for you to interact with them. It's really irritating. I much prefer, it's an older one, but I much prefer, like, NPCs that do stuff like in Skyrim. If you hit one, the whole town is pissed off. The class was not very popular, which is why it had been recommended to him in the first place. The fact that everyone who took it started on equal footing made it more appealing to him than other classes.
けど、青崎の言う通り。
He downed the rest of the tea, having no appreciation for its flavor, and refilled his cup. The tea was still warm since the ceramic teapot had excellent heat retention.
文字で物事を覚えるのは苦手みたいだ。
He vaguely recalled their conversation as his eyes advanced across the page. The lack of lighting in the foyer was forcing him to rely on illumination from the skylight. The light cut into the room at a diagonal angle in such a way as to divide the foyer into light and dark areas, with the fireplace in shadow. The room resembled an ancient ruins covered in ash, or perhaps the quiet, forgotten world of a faded fairy tale. Time slipped on by with the white walls of this room hidden away from the sun. The minutes passed slowly for some time until the sound of a textbook slamming shut brought the room back to reality. Shojiro stretched his stiff back and eagerly got started on cleaning up. I know, right? It would be nice if they took a hint from other game companies and, like, actually let you interact with the NPCs. Because sometimes you gotta hit that shopkeeper, right? There's some times where you just have to go around the desk and just punch him right in the face. He put his textbook back in his bag, placed his cup on the tray, leaving Alice sitting in front of her on the floor.
バイトの時間だ。
He said unceremoniously. He spoke as if to convince himself that he had no other choice as he prepared to leave the sleepy foyer behind. But before he could, a sound behind him stopped him in his tracks. He turned around with his bag under his arm and tray in his hands. So as not to cause even a ripple in her teacup, he greeted her. Really? Really? That's not most other games. You can hit chickens and cows and I mean, chickens are a little weird in Skyrim. If you don't know, in Skyrim the chickens can actually report crimes. So if there's nobody around and you steal something and you get a bounty, it's because a chicken saw you. It's messed up. Yes, the chickens can report crimes in Skyrim. It's kind of funny, though.
Yeah.
In a light, easygoing manner, she remained seated next to the fireplace like a black-eyed sleeping beauty. Her face was as still as a statue, almost no different than it had been in slumber. Looking at Alice now, he realized just how different she and Aoko really were. Aoko communicated her feelings openly, even if he never could quite tell where they came from. Her trademark expression of irritation would keep him guessing as to the reason she was angry, but to her credit, her emotional state was always clear. Alice, on the other hand, was completely unreadable. She might be angry, or then again sad. He could not tell either way.
何のつもり?
I think he thinks he's going to work. Her question gave him a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach. He could not decide whether it was ominous or perplexing that he ominous and sorry he could not decide whether it was animosity or perplexity that he heard in her voice. I know, right? If you kill the chicken, the whole town comes after you just for killing one little chicken. It will probably respawn fairly shortly in a couple of in-game days. The chicken will inevitably respawn. I don't know what they're so concerned about. But yes, the whole of town will attack you if you kill the chicken. If the former, this was likely to turn into a replay of their interaction from the other night. An image of the shattered bottle sprang to his mind. Shojiro knew his response would be extremely important. And after struggling for a few moments, he finally worked up the courage to say something. Just not the correct thing, unfortunately.
そうだな。一口じゃ説明できないから、座るよ。
He had no idea what the correct approach would be, so he simply did whatever came to his mind instead. She gave him no response. Her face said that she detested his presence, but he plowed ahead regardless. Shojiro took his seat and set down the tray once more. Their eyes met. Her inscrutable gaze was enough to turn most people away. Oh yeah, you're mostly a good guy in games? I try to be, but I mean, I end up usually not being the nicest of people in game. Like, I mean, in PvP, I don't really play PvP games because I don't like PKing per se, but I mean, I will definitely join the Assassin's Guild or the Thieves Guild. Those are definitely things I'll do in a game. Not gonna lie. But the target of her animosity appeared not to notice it at all.
それで
ああ、遅くなったけど、こうして話がしたかったんだ、アリスと。
Despite having suggested that it would take time to explain, he managed to sum things up succinctly.
私と会うことではなく、
ん？そうだね。青崎とはもっと話したいところだけど、それよりは3人で話してみたい。
Alice found herself out of kilter, unable to read his true intentions. Shojiro continued on, failing to notice her bewilderment.
青崎は普段からアリスとは会話がないって言うんだ。それが俺のせいなら困るし、俺のせいじゃないならもっと困る。せっかく同じ場所にいるのに会話がないなんて、もったいないと思うんだ。
Each word he spoke was heavy with emotion. Alice remained utterly unable to discern this boy's intentions. All she could parse was there was something he wanted from her. But what could that be? What she found even stranger was that he was not speaking to her from a place of fear.
あなたは私が怖くないの？
ああ、だってそう言えるほど、俺は君をよく知らない。
Don't know enough about her to be scared of her. Fair enough. Her gleaming eyes looked like they were made of polished quartz. His response had not been what she expected. He spoke with pure honesty and unfettered truth. Such boldness, however, did not actually upset her. Yeah, you could call it neutral, I guess. It is fun being a mercenary. I mean, there's no harm in saying it's fun being a mercenary in most games. I mean, unless the game is specifically trying to not be a mercenary, but you do it anyway. Which I guess can be fun in its own way. Their conversation ground to a halt. If you could even call it a conversation in the first place. Alice grew tense, as if displeased by the strangely comfortable moment of silence between them. Shuhiro endured her cold stare, showing no sign of flinching.
話。
ん？
私と話をしたいと言ったでしょ。
Yeah, so talk.
なら、好きにしてみたら。
It was more challenge than an invitation. He had neither a topic on hand, nor were they intimate enough to strike up a casual conversation. Nonetheless, her challenge hanged in the air, waiting for a response. You're absolutely right, Dawson. It is kind of a gray area. And it's that gray area is kind of nice every now and then. You know, you can still play a bad guy without being an absolute terrible person, and you can play the good guy without being an absolute goody two-shoes.
じゃあ、あの鳥の話を。ほら、そこにいる青い鳥。
I do remember when Skull and Bones said it was a AAA game. I'm still waiting for them to prove it.
たまに見かけるんだけど、君の飼い鳥か？それとも、ほら、なんて言ったかな。プロイだっけ？あの鳥。
Her eyes let slip for a moment, a very natural response. It was annoyance, such that which one might feel toward a troublemaker.
あれもプロイだけど、私とは何の関係もないダッチョウ。ずいぶん古くからいるだけで、私もよく知らないわ。
ん？じゃあ勝手に住んでるのか？この家に。
勝手になんて、私が許すはずがないでしょ。ロビンは本当に役に立たないけど。
I mean, if you're gonna call your game a AAA game, you best back it up.
失敗続きでも特別に住まわせてあげてるの。
Skull and Bones did not back up that AAA claim.
そっか、安心した。ここに住むの役に立たなきゃダメってわけでもないんだね。
The Assassin's Creed games have been kind of a big flop for a while now, I think, Dawson. They've been getting worse and worse and worse. He turned away in silence to avoid looking at his hapless grin. Thus began Shojiro's very lengthy monologue. It started with his part-time job, then moved on to school, next came the amusement park and random gossip around town, and last, the subject of rent. He spent all of 20 minutes on mindless small talk. He ran out of things to say and finally stopped.
ごめん。アルバイトがあるから。もう行くよ。
And that was that. After finally getting his long-awaited chance to talk to her, he realized he had no exit plan in place. So he returned the tray to the kitchen, placed his bag in the foyer, and headed for the door. She had never seen the boy so candid. Which was why, overcome with surprise, she found herself calling out to him.
待って。
She had no reason to do so, and yet she called out anyway.
何？
今日はポットがあったけど。
うん。昨日の反省点だったから。結局使ったのは自分だけだけど。
そう。そのポットはコーヒーとの兼用だから。ハーブティーには合わないわ。
Nojiro's eyes grew wide with shock. Wow, she's being surprisingly level-headed. Now he remembered that there had been all sorts of cups and teapots in the cupboard, each one specially designed for a different type of tea.
なかなかに奥深い。あれかな。慣れないことはするもんじゃないってことか。
He let out a vexed sigh.
どうして私を起こさなかったの？
Probably because he thought you might explode him or put him back in a bottle. I don't know. Either she had not heard what he had said, or she had been waiting this whole time for a chance to ask him that. Yeah, I'd have to agree. After Assassin's Creed Odyssey, it really started going downhill. Unfortunately. Was that one Black Flag, I think? Was that before Odyssey, or did that one come out after? Because I think that one was not half bad. In any case, her question abruptly interrupted his stream of thought. He fell silent with introspection. The thought of waking her had not so much crossed his mind either that day or the previous one.
言って。起こす気も、起きることも期待していなかったのは、なぜ？
Eyes were filled with animosity. Lies were useless against such an all-piercing gaze. The setting sun transformed the foyer into a battle of life and death. Lies or deceptive answers would not be permitted. Amidst the palpable tension that filled the room, where any move, wrong or otherwise, was likely to get him killed, he felt pain rather than fear. Alice's voice was icy cold. Preemptively reacting to any response he was to give. Okay, it did come out before Odyssey. That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. Best best pirate game you ever played, huh? I'm playing another pirate. I'm playing a pirate game on Steam. Just give me 1 second to look up what it's called, because it's really good. Tempest. That is a really good pirate game. I'm really enjoying that one. The boy vaguely imagined a newborn chick that had fallen from the nest, struggling to survive on its own. 2014 was Ubisoft's last great year. It's hard to disagree with that, to be perfectly honest. It gasped, hanging on a thread of hope, yet detesting where that thread hung.
言わなきゃいけないか。
Alice nodded sharply.
じゃあ言うけど、別に深い考えがあったわけじゃない。単にネタ子を起こすのは良くないだろ。
冗談は聞いてないわ。
I don't think that was a joke, Alice.
冗談じゃないよ。眠っているのならそのままでいいと思ったんだ。話はしたいけど、それはまた目が覚めた次の機会にするべきだって。
随分と悠長なのね。青子があなたを守るのは今日までだって聞いているけど。
Yes, her protection ends today. That is true.
私に取り入る機会はこれが最後なのに。
Yep, sure do.
それとも、あれだけ忠告されておいて、まだ何も分かっていないの。
He had not. He swore to her, agreed to her terms, and gone as far as to sit face to face with her and get to know her. Surely he thought this was enough to escape death. And she believed as a mage that this naive, good-willed, and simple-mindedness were all the reason she needed to execute him. Trivial misunderstandings would only make things worse at this point. "2014 was their last great year because of Far Cry 4, Watch Dogs, and Assassin's Creed Rogue." Yeah, those were all pretty good.
そりゃ何もわからないよ。魔術とか魔法とか、たった数日でわかるもんか。はっきりしているのは、アリスも青崎も言ったことはきっちり守るってことだけだ。
なら、どうして？
Her gaze said what she really wanted to ask. She wanted to know why he did not beg for his life. She knew the answer. She saw the look on his face when he turned to leave without so much as trying to wake her. A look of resignation. What on earth had it meant?
どうしてって、そう言われても困る。そうだな。機会が訪れなかったのなら、それはそういうことだと思ったのかもしれない。君の寝顔はそれぐらい、なんていうか、判断に困った。青崎とは違う意味で、簡単には関われないと思ったんだ。
Shojiro struggled to find the right words, but said what he was feeling in the moment anyway. He'd seen a sleeping witch of the wood who clearly needed someone's help, yet sought the help of no one.
でも、
しずきくんは関わろうとしているのね。
Yeah, I agree. After those ones, they started their games were all right, and then progressively poorer and poorer.
その機会は訪れなかったのに。
機会はやってきたよ。なんでこっちも今日ぐらいは自分の勝手にして無茶をしたくなったんだ。
しずきくんの言う通りなら、私はあなたを拒絶するしかないのに。
I mean, I'm pretty sure he always did expect you to reject him. I kinda did.
まあそこが難しいところなんだけど。
Shojiro glanced at the entrance. He had no reason to. He just felt an urge to do so.
多分そこを解決したがってるのは俺だけじゃないと思うよ。
He muttered as if speaking to himself, but it was clearly meant for her to hear. Alice knew full well how poorly he had understood the situation. All of this was one giant misunderstanding on his part. His tiny gesture of goodwill, pitiful and pure, resembled that of someone reaching out to help a dying kitten. For Alice, doing so would be akin to clutching the thorns of a rose. She felt pain in her chest for the first time in quite a while.
けど、私はあなたの同居を認めてはいないわ。
He addressed the floor at her feet to avoid showing him how she truly felt. If he had, he would have. If she had, he would have seen her face look just the way Aoko's had earlier.
だろうな。それはきっと今は解決できない問題だ。でもそのうち何かの気まぐれであっさり終わるものかもしれない。だからその時までアリスはずっと。
Her gasp of breath was like a response in itself. To suggest she could keep hating him? She had once wished to hear those words so dearly, if only the once.
大体だぞ。アリスだけじゃなく青崎も同居を認めてない節があるじゃないか。だから認めてもらうなんて意気込み自体が間違いなんだ。どうあっても俺は青崎や君たちとは違うんだし。となるとあとは我慢してもらうしかない。
It's Greensoft now instead of Ubisoft. That is probably a fair assessment.
難しい話だけど、一緒にいても邪魔にならないぐらいなら、その可能性は上がらないか？
Thinking that, of course, it was possible, but if it were that easy, none of this would have been necessary in the first place. Alice nodded in agreement. There was no way he could have planned for things to work out this well. But his plan, in fact, had worked, if inadvertently, from the moment the conversation began.
例えば、あなたが隣にいても眠っていられるぐらいに。
You think Alice and Shojiro could be great friends? Well, I mean, Shojiro could be great friends with anybody. It's just a matter of Alice giving him the chance to be a great friend.
そうだね。例えばの話。
Beaming, Shojiro stood up and left the foyer. Alice did not stop him this time. He had a newfound spring in his step as he headed to work. But something gave him a moment's
実
pause.
際覗き見は趣味が悪いと思う。
He complained aloud to make sure a certain someone heard him. It is always wise to choose your friends carefully. That is very true. Although I think Alice might be choosing her friends a little too carefully. No more than 2 minutes had passed since Shojiro left the mansion when a long-haired figure came creeping into the foyer. Aoko Awazaki had been just outside the entire time, eavesdropping.
帰ってたの。
Of course she was. Go figure. With a sullen glare, Alice addressed the interloper. Oh? Do you think him and Alice could be great friends, but a love interest for Aoko? I could see that working in kind of a twisted way. She demanded or deemed gloves an abomination and refused to wear them except in the most extreme cold. As a result, her slender fingers were pitifully swollen and red.
ちょっと前にね。それでどうだったのアリス。ずいぶんと話してたみたいだけど。
Choose your lovers even more carefully. Yeah, true. True. She looked strangely elated as she blew on her hands to warm them. Alice was not fooled by all Aoko's facade, clear from the ill-tempered look she wore on her face.
あなたがここまで過保護とは思わなかったわ。意地？それとも義務？
That's true. It is entirely possible something in her past is coloring her how she picks her friends, which is fair.
どっちかって
If
い
they
うと成り
explain
行きね
that, they do. If they don't, well, we'll just have to guess.
で、どうだったのよ結果は。気に食わなかったら実力行使に出るって言ってたじゃない。
Alice's mood was growing darker and darker the longer she had to look at Aoko's cheerful posturing. It all went back to their dinner together the previous night. After everything that happened in the foyer, Alice was both more suspicious and intrigued by Shojiro than ever before. She insisted that Aoko let him walk home alone the next day. She then used a concoction to fake her slumber and recreate the same scene as the previous day. Oh, that slide! She set the whole thing up! That portion of her plan went well, but the rest had veered totally off course. It did not help to know her roommate had savored every moment of it from the other side of the wall, either. To make matters worse, Alice was frustrated at herself for letting such trivial matters bother her. She stared at the teacup still sitting on the floor. Her pale fingers traced its cold rim.
青子の言う通り、害にはならない人ね。あくまで今のところの話だけど。
She forced a tone of indifference in order to hide her irritation with her apprentice. It was in this moment that Shojiro's fate was decided.
あら、それだけ？ アリスにしては長く話してたのに。
Relentless, Aoko continued her line of questioning. Yeah, it seems that way. Once you get past the frozen witch from hell, yeah, she does seem to be an actually rather nice person. Alice only stared back icily.
青子、あなた、隠していたわね。
He voiced her displeasure at Aoko's behavior in no uncertain terms. Suddenly, the air in the foyer felt cold as ice. They stared at one another, each trying to guess the other's next move.
さすがね。よくそこに気がついたもんだわ。でも、こればかりは譲れないのよ。
Aoko widened her stance and glared at Alice.
何も全て奪うとは言っていないわ。そうね。あなたにも3割ぐらいは回すつもり。
Completely unperturbed by Aoko's warlike posturing, a simple look was all Alice needed to keep her roommate in check.
ふん。10が3に化けちゃ、ちょっと黙ってらんないわね。
高望みは命取りよ、青子。
Alice remained calm and dignified, not moving a muscle. It felt like hours passed as the two stared at each other in silence. Aoko was grinding her teeth in frustration. At this rate, their alliance would be in tatters before they even confronted their foe. Just have to warm the ice of her heart slowly over time. Seems like the kind of person Alice is, yeah. Once you melt all that ice away. And worst of all, she knew Alice had the upper hand.
ケチ。
Aoko accepted her defeat with a
悔しいけど、アリスが6。私が4で手を打つわ。
It pained her to settle for less. Alice nodded in satisfaction.
そうね。家主は私だけど、彼を招いたのは青子だから。その代わり、家賃の取り立てはあなたの役割ね。
いいけど。情けない。こんなことなら錬金術でもかじっておくんだった。
Should have got into
そう
alchemy
すればこんな
instead.
思いをしなくても済んだのに。
Oh,
そうでもないわ。彼ら、バブルが弾けて大変だって話よ。
Alice spoke with the confidence of someone with first-hand experience of such matters, yet Aoko only nodded absent-mindedly in response. That is true, Dawson, that some people have deep scars that take incredibly long time to heal. Absolutely. Their bitter fight was over how to split the take of Shojiro's rent now that he was officially going to move in. Not the most becoming quarrel for a pair of mages. Forcing a boy to live with them and then demanding he pay rent was beyond extortion. It was truly vicious.
でも、そんなセリフが出るってことは、アリスもようやく認めたってことね。
Aoko was triumphantly satisfied with herself.
認めてはいないけど、 公園での夜、彼を結界で捕捉しなかった責任があるから。彼と約束をした青子だけを責められないでしょ。
約束か。
Aoko looked up at the ceiling as she recalled the night at the amusement park. Only a week at most had passed since then, but Aoko already felt that Shojiro's fate and hers, and her own, had become intrinsically linked. Or perhaps they had always been connected by fate since the moment they'd met. She could not see into the future, so there was no way to know for sure.
ま、縁とか運とかはともかく、変だけどいいやつよね、あいつ。
A thought uttered to herself in self-confirmation more than to Alice. Alice could only look on in annoyance, perhaps in an attempt to voice her displeasure at her comment.
青子、あの傷を知ってる？
傷？
Apparently, Aoko did not know about his injury. Alice raised her slender fingers to her mouth as if to push the words back in. She had blurted it out in the heat of the moment, a secret that no one else was supposed to know, but that which one couldn't keep to herself.
Hmm?
Aoko tilted her head in confusion.
そう。
Alice looked relieved for some reason. Her sudden antipathy towards Aoko had dissipated as well.
幸せな人。
Said Alice as she took a sip of her cold tea. She made no attempt to explain who was fortunate or why. A moment later, her beautiful face contorted in revulsion.
まずい。
Indeed, he made terrible tea. She abandoned the cup to the floor once more, her black dress unceremoniously scrunched up as she stood. Just one sip of the underbrewed tea sent her fleeing to the drawing room to remove the bad taste from her mouth. As soon as she was gone, Aoko hesitatingly took the teacup in her own hands. It was almost certainly better left untasted, but she could not help but wonder how Shojiro's tea could arouse such a strong response. After one small sip, she returned it quietly to the floor.
だからティーバッグにしろって言ったのに、あのバカ。
Oh, it's terrible tea. The expression on her face was nearly identical to that of her roommates. All right, well, this looks like a really good place to end for today. I want to thank everybody for coming to today's stream. It means the world to me, you guys. I really enjoy having you guys in the chat and getting to interact with you, so thanks for coming out. Don't forget, we got another episode of One Piece tomorrow. I'm not sure what's going to happen with Fate in our next episode, if we are going to do another team in the Kane Championship, or if we should continue on with the story. I'll figure that out fairly soon, hopefully. But yeah, all right, guys, we'll see you in the next one. Bye for meow. Have a great day, Dawson. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.